As the ice melts, a new battlefield emerges. Silent subnavigate beneath frozen seas. The Arctic. The Arctic. For centuries, it remained a frozen, desolate wasteland. This was a place where nature ruled. But now, in the 21st century, that entire dynamic is changing, and it is happening with astonishing, unprecedented speed.
The Arctic is no longer just ice. It is now seen as a massive opportunity. And opportunity.
In just the last 2 decades, global warming has caused the melting of billions of tons of ancient Arctic ice. What was once an impenetrable shield of frozen water is now opening new pathways for trade, for oil, and for dominance.
By the year 2035, the Arctic Ocean could be completely ice-free in summer for the first time in recorded history. For global powers, this means a new maritime frontier, a shortcut between continents, a new battlefield just waiting to be claimed.
Russia, the United States, and China all see the Arctic not as a tragedy, but as a massive geopolitical jackpot.
No single nation has more to gain, or potentially more to lose, in the rapidly changing Arctic than the nation of Russia.
An astonishing fact, nearly half of the entire Arctic coastline belongs exclusively to the massive Russian Federation. Beneath that frozen ground lie immense, untapped riches. Over 90 billion barrels of oil are estimated to be waiting there. Also, 1,700 trillion cubic feet of natural gas, and vast, strategic reserves of rare earth minerals.
To Moscow, the Arctic is not just land. It is a lifeline, a future energy reserve, and a fortress of survival.
This is precisely why Russia has turned its northern border into one of the most militarized regions on planet Earth.
From Murmansk to the New Siberian Islands, a chain of bases, radar stations, and runways now dots the Arctic Circle.
The Northern Fleet in Severomorsk houses Russia's most advanced nuclear submarines, like the Borei-class and the stealthy Yasen-class.
High above the ice, Russia's advanced MiG-31 interceptors constantly patrol the skies, watching for any potential aerial threats.
Far below it, silent submarines carry ballistic missiles, each capable of reaching any strategic point on the planet.
The Arctic for Russia is clearly not just about oil and gas. It is about gaining vital strategic depth.
It serves as a defensive shield against NATO, and a primary corridor for its powerful nuclear deterrence.
For decades, the United States treated the Arctic as a distant theater, relevant, but secondary.
But as Russia expands and China enters the fray, Washington, D.C. can no longer afford to look away.
After years of relative quiet, the United States Navy's strategic interest in the high north has finally reignited.
Submarines from the U.S. Pacific and Atlantic fleets now conduct annual exercises together beneath the thick Arctic ice.
These are known as ISEX operations, specifically designed to simulate difficult combat situations in the extreme cold. The U.S. Coast Guard is modernizing its icebreaker fleet, though it still lags behind Russia's fleet by decades. Where Moscow commands over 40 operational icebreakers, Washington, D.C. currently has just 2 operational heavy icebreakers. But America's strategic power in the region does not rely on ship numbers alone. It relies on its networks.
Through the NATO alliance, it commands access to Greenland, Iceland, Norway, and Canada, creating a powerful strategic position.
This forms what military strategists refer to as the GIUK Gap. This is the vital naval choke point.
It runs between Greenland, Iceland, and the United Kingdom, controlling access to the North Atlantic.
Now, it is right back in focus, as the Arctic heats up both politically and, quite literally.
China does not border the Arctic, and yet it officially calls itself a near-Arctic state.
Through its Polar Silk Road initiative, China aims to integrate Arctic routes into its global Belt and Road project.
This initiative means much shorter trade routes between Asia and Europe, saving vast amounts of time, money, and fuel.
China has invested in Icelandic ports, Russian LNG projects, and Arctic research stations in Svalbard.
But analysts urge observers to make no mistake. These are not purely, or even primarily, scientific missions.
They are seen as strategic stepping stones in a much larger, long-term strategy for the Chinese government.
To secure influence, access resources, and establish a foothold in a region long dominated by Western powers. Beijing's icebreaker, the Zhulong-2, sails under the banner of research, but its capabilities extend far beyond science. It is a symbol, a clear message that China intends to be part of the Arctic's future, militarily or economically. As these geopolitical tensions continue to rise, the NATO alliance has decisively shifted its full attention northward. Norway, with its vast coastline and proximity to Russian bases, has become a critical frontline state once again. The U.S. Marine Corps now trains in Norway's fjords, testing new cold weather equipment and combat tactics.
British Royal Navy submarines operate silently beneath the Arctic ice, tasked with monitoring Russian fleet movements.
And Canada, once seen as complacent, is now expanding its Arctic patrols and its northern surveillance infrastructure.
The alliance sees the Arctic not just as an environmental challenge, but as a new line of strategic deterrence. It is a chessboard where submarines, satellites, and sensors replace the old battlefields of tanks and trenches.
While politicians talk, engineers and scientists race to develop the technologies that will decide the Arctic's future.
This includes underwater drones capable of mapping and mining the seabed, operating completely unseen from the surface. Also, autonomous submarines operating for months, and satellites that monitor troop movements in total polar darkness. The Arctic's remoteness demands innovation, stealth, endurance, and precision. Whoever controls these technologies controls the region. Russia already claims to have tested new nuclear-powered underwater drones, publicly known as the Poseidon system. These weapons are described as capable of unleashing devastating tsunami-like waves across coastal cities. The U.S. counters with advanced anti-submarine networks, combining sonar buoys, satellites, and artificial intelligence.
This new battle is invisible.
To maintain diplomacy, the Arctic Council was established in 1996, a forum for cooperation among Arctic nations.
But this council was fundamentally a scientific and cultural body. It was never designed for serious geopolitical conflict.
After the 2022 conflict in Ukraine, most member states froze diplomatic relations with Moscow within the Council.
That single event marked the end of Arctic exceptionalism, the belief the North Pole was immune to geopolitics.
Now, the Arctic Council stands divided, a reflection of a world drifting back into new blocks and old rivalries.
The ice continues to melt, but the geopolitical shadows are only growing deeper and much darker. The Arctic is no longer a place of mystery. It is a theater of strategy, a proving ground for power.
As the world warms, the race accelerates. The question is no longer who explores the Arctic, but who controls it. In the next chapter, the silent war beneath surface begins.
Sound waves constantly bend, refract, and completely vanish under the different layers of ice and cold water.
For submarines, it'll both a curse and a gift, the perfect cover for stealth missions.
Russia's powerful northern fleet has made the dark Arctic Ocean its primary strategic domain.
Its Borei-class nuclear submarines, each carrying 16 Bulava intercontinental ballistic missiles, patrol the region like ghosts. Their mission is to ensure a second strike capability, the power to retaliate even after a nuclear attack. The U.S. Navy responds with its own silent hunters, the Virginia-class attack submarines, with advanced sonar.
Each patrol under the Arctic ice is a high-stakes chess game,
where one ping could reveal a vessel's position.
In recent years, satellite imagery and sonar buoys have detected increased submarine activity near the GIUK Gap.
Intelligence analysts call it the return of Cold War dynamics, only this time under a new flag.
But this time, the stakes are arguably higher. The vast distances and limited communication make miscalculation easy.
A single unidentified sonar echo could ignite a major crisis that absolutely no one intended to start.
The Arctic is not just a strategic arena. It is also an enormous economic goldmine.
The U.S. Geological Survey says 13% of undiscovered oil and 30% of undiscovered natural gas lie here. And as the ice retreats, these vast resources become accessible for the very first time in human history.
Russia has begun drilling in the Yamal Peninsula, supported by Chinese investment and Arctic-ready LNG tankers.
The U.S., Canada, and Norway are following suit, exploring their own offshore reserves despite environmental opposition. But oil and gas are just the beginning. The Arctic holds vast deposits of rare earth minerals.
Control over these minerals could mean control over the industries of the future, from green energy to weaponry.
As one geopolitical analyst bleakly put it, in the 20th century, wars were fought for oil.
In the 21st, they may be fought for cobalt, and the Arctic has plenty of it.
Peace. Officially, every nation claims the Arctic should remain a peaceful zone. Unofficially, every nation is building bases.
Russia's Nagurskoye Air Base on Franz Josef Land is now a fully operational hub with jet-capable runways.
The U.S. reactivated Thule Air Base in Greenland. It's a forward post for satellite surveillance and missile tracking. China, meanwhile, expands its Arctic presence. It uses facilities known as dual-use research stations to establish its foothold.
These stations collect data valuable not just for science, but also for military navigation and secure communications.
And what about NATO? It's preparing for full-spectrum Arctic warfare, from underwater combat to drone reconnaissance. The Trident Juncture exercises in Norway showed how alliance forces defend the Arctic under freezing temperatures and disruption. The message sent by these maneuvers was unequivocally clear. The alliance is ready to fight in the cold.
Ironically, the very same melting ice that is creating all this opportunity also brings catastrophic destruction.
As ancient permafrost thaws, it destabilizes infrastructure, releases methane, and accelerates even more global warming.
In this environmental chaos, military planners and strategists see both significant risk and potential tactical leverage.
Climate instability can be used strategically. It can justify military presence, secure supply routes, or control disaster relief. In some strategic circles, the Arctic is now being called the new climate battlefield of the 21st century.
This is a domain where environmental and military interests merge, blurring the lines between aid and hard power.
Scientists repeatedly warn that this increased militarization will only worsen the region's delicate and rapid ecological collapse.
But in the halls of power, these environmental warnings often sound just like new tactical opportunities to exploit. The Arctic has now become the ultimate triangle of great power rivalry: Russia, the United States, and China. Russia holds the clear advantage in geography, controlling the longest coastline, and possesses the most military infrastructure.
The United States, on the other hand, commands the strongest alliances and the most advanced military technology.
And China brings immense sums of money, a patient long-term strategy, and a hunger for global relevance.
Each nation is playing a very different game, but all three are ultimately moving toward the exact same goal.
That goal, to rewrite global trade rules, resource ownership, and defense, starting from the top of the world downward. The Arctic region may still be physically remote, but in geopolitical terms, it is no longer isolated.
New fiber optic cables, satellites, and polar orbits make it as connected and contested as any other front line.
Looking ahead, geopolitical analysts currently foresee three possible and very different futures for the Arctic region.
First is the cold cooperation scenario. Nations agree to share routes and resources peacefully, enforced by international law.
Second, the polarized conflict scenario.
Great powers militarize the region, leading to proxy confrontations and cyber warfare.
Third, the corporate colonization scenario. Here, multinational corporations, backed by states, dominate all Arctic exploitation. They use private armies and autonomous drones, operating completely beyond any government oversight or international law. Right now, the world stands precariously somewhere between the second and third paths: conflict and colonization. Tensions rise, the old rules blur, and nature itself becomes the ultimate victim of human ambition.
Amid this global struggle, the indigenous peoples of the Arctic, the Inuit, Sami, and Nenets, face existential change.
Their ancient traditions, lands, and ecosystems are threatened by melting ice and by the march of militarization. Some communities are caught between rival powers, their homelands used for new military bases or resource extraction.
Other communities are adapting, serving as guides, scientists, and as defenders of their ancient way of life.
The ice is not just melting. It is disappearing from our hearts.
We remember that in the 20th century, the world was divided by the infamous Iron Curtain.
In the 21st century, a new curtain is forming. A cold curtain, made of...
The Arctic region may very soon define the global balance of power for many generations to come. Whoever masters this new domain will control trade routes, vast energy reserves, and total global surveillance.
In the end, the Arctic will not fall to warships or to missiles. It will fall to those who endure. It will fall to those who can survive the silence, the extreme cold, and the endless white horizon.
As the ancient ice melts away at an alarming rate, the ambitions of powerful nations rise.
The entire world watches this new contest, but the Arctic still keeps many of its ancient secrets. And somewhere far beneath the frozen waves, the powerful engines of the future are already running.